And let me just ask you, just following up on that, what is your view of, because I asked Senator McCain, what is your view of American policy right now? I mean, what's your opinion of it, and also how do you explain it?
My view on American policy in Libya, I think that America did well. France took the lead, but America did well. I think I had a few an inside view of the story, and I can say that America was saved, the honor of America was saved by a president, of course, Obama, but by three women. Samantha Power, Susan Rice, and Hillary Clinton. I happened to be the one who took Mahmoud Jibril to Paris in March, when there was this meeting of the G8, when Hillary Clinton was in Paris to see Nicolas Sarkozy and Alain Juppé. And Mahmoud Jibril, who was transitional prime minister of Libya, had a face-to-face meeting with future Ambassador Christopher Stevens, who was not yet ambassador. He was there. There was a meeting face-to-face between Jibril and Hillary Clinton. And my belief, and my feeling and my belief is that a great deal of the story happened during these 45 minutes. There was two persons, a man and a woman, a heart speaking to another heart, a great plea of Mahmoud Jibril addressed to a mother, to a humanitarian militant who is Hillary Clinton. And when Jibril went out of the office, I think that Hillary Clinton was really impressed, moved. Then there was this conversation overseas between Gates, Clinton and Obama, and so on. So Clinton, Rice, Samantha Power, they did a great job. And of course, President Obama and the whole administration followed very bravely. Today, about Syria, I must confess that I don't understand. During the campaign, one could understand. There was a special context, there was the electoral fight and so on. But now, what prevents? Opposite to what is generally said, it is more doable today against Assad than it was 2 years ago against Gaddafi. All those who tell us, but you can't say that, Syria is very difficult, very complicated, they lie. It is much doable. A war is never easy, and it is always tragic, and the collateral effects are always dramatic. But as soon as this is said, it is more doable today in Syria than it was doable yesterday in Libya. And I could explain why later.
Could I make just 2 points? One is that all the things that the non-interventionists said would happen if we intervened have now happened in Syria. The influence and dramatic increase in al-Qaeda presence, the escalation of bombing, the tensions on the borders, all of the things that were predicted that would happen if we intervene are now happening, and in spades. And again, it cries out for American leadership. But I think that we also must view this situation in Syria in the broader context of the entire upheaval that's taking place in the Middle East, and especially the role of Iran. Iran are the missiles that were in Gaza. It was Iran who was sending in the Revolutionary Guards on the ground that are training this new paramilitary force. And believe me, in warfare, there's nothing more atrocious than these kinds of paramilitary forces. It's the Iranians that continue to have the centrifuges spinning. It's the Iranians that are even influencing al-Qaeda or other extremist groups throughout the region, and continuing to provoke and to plot even assassinations here in our nation's capital. So I think when we look at Syria, we also have to look at the effect of the fall of Bashar on Iran, and also what Iran will continue to do, not just in Syria, but, for example, Hezbollah. in southern Lebanon. Suppose that they decide to trigger these missiles, which would overwhelm Iron Dome. There's so many things, moving parts in the region, and so much of it can be traced back to the number one spoiler in the region on top of the Arab Spring, and that is the Iranian meddling in literally every part of the Middle East.
Well, let's talk about then what should be done. What's your current view on what we ought to be doing?
The no-fly zone, which, by the way, does not mean that we go after Bashar's air defenses. It means that we place anti-air missiles in place, and I guarantee you, first Syrian aircraft we shot down, that would be the last one to fly over a no-fly zone. A place where they can, a Benghazi where they can organize, where they can train, where they can equip, where we can find out who the good guys and the bad guys are in this effort to form a revolutionary council that will be effective, and also, frankly, to counter what is the increasing influence of al-Qaeda and extremists who are pouring in from all over the Middle East. The longer this goes, the more likely we're going to have enormous challenges with these kinds of, it'll be the militias in Libya magnified by a factor of 10. So then obviously it would be nice if we had the United Nations, but I really believe that, one, Americans are war weary, no boots on the ground, no boots on the ground, no boots on the ground. But we could prevail with the kind of equipment that they need, and training and organization. Right now they have no place to organize.
Are you talking about giving anti-aircraft weapons to the opposition, or are you talking about emplacements in Turkey, or what?
We could do some of the above. I think Patriot missiles, as now the Germans are moving some Patriot missiles under some kind of weird circumstances, but at least they're coming into Turkey. Or we could give them a limited number, a controlled number of man pads. But primarily, I think it would just be a Patriot installation. Pilots are not going to fly into certain death. I don't care how brave they are. And you shoot down one or two of them, they're not going to fly there again. They may like Bashar Assad, but they like to live a little more.
Is Turkey ready to play that role?
Again, everybody I talk to in Turkey and in the region, it cries out for American leadership. I think that the Turks are having significant public opinion problems. They're overwhelmed by huge numbers of refugees. They see this thing continuing. We're going to have, my friends, the next big challenge in the Middle East is the ambitions of the Kurds for a Kurdish state. And the longer this kind of situation prevails, the more that they're going to have their ambitions. They're in Syria, they're in Iraq, they're in Iran. They're everywhere. They're in Turkey, as you know. So I think that it's very obvious that we can, the sooner we get this thing moving in the right direction, the better. But I worry about Erdogan. I worry about his ambitions. I worry about his comments. He took himself out of the negotiations on the Gaza thing by his comments about Israel. One thing I can assure all of us, and I'm totally confident of, is we didn't know what the world in the Middle East was going to look like 2 years ago, or a little over 2 years ago, when all these other guys were in power. We cannot predict what the world is going to be, Middle East is going to be like 2 years from now, except that it cries out for American leadership. And that's what, in my view, and I hate to be partisan when I say this, but it is missing there. It is missing. And when I talk to all of these leaders, whether they be Gulf leaders or any place else in the Middle East, they want American leadership.
Do you have other thoughts you wanted to add to what ought to be done? And do you have a view as to whether, I mean, if an administration official were sitting here, they would say, A, Erdogan talks a good game, but he doesn't really want to do anything in Syria for a lot of the reasons that you mentioned, including the Kurdish thing. B, we don't want to give anti-aircraft weapons to people because we don't know what happens to them after they've used them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That all these things, I've heard the phrase non-starter, everything's a non-starter, and that's why they go to the Security Council.
The question is not will Assad fall? Assad will fall. The question is, will Assad fall with the help of the West or without the help of the West? This is the crucial question. If Assad falls in a few weeks, in a few months, without the help of the West, then it will be an affair between Iran and Saudi Arabia. It will be a fight between Qatar and the allies of Guards of Revolutions, and so on. If it is with the West, then, number one, we will do our duty of Democrats. We will have the flag of our values high. And number two, we will have our word to say in the future of this area. Look at what happens in Libya today. Egypt, Tunisia, Libya. It's a commonplace to say that things don't go so well in Egypt and in Tunisia, which is true. Muslim brothers are on power in Egypt, women are not in such a good situation in Tunisia, and so on. Look at what happens in Libya. In Libya, the Muslim brothers lost the elections in last July. The secular and moderate Muslims won. The prime minister is Mr. Ali Zaidan, who is a true Libyan patriot, but who is also a friend of the West, a friend of Europe, a friend of America, a true human rights fighter. He was the president of the Human Rights League for 20 years and so on. So what is the difference between Libya on one side and Egypt and Tunisia on the other side? The difference, one of the differences, is that the Libyans did the job with the help of the West. They know that the key argument of Al-Qaeda, which is the West is against us, the West is devil, America is the grand devil, and so on, is false. They know that the West is not the eternal ally of the dictators. And this reshaped completely the way of thinking of a lot of average people in Libya. The grass has been cut under the feet of the Islamists and of the Al-Qaeda. The key argument was the West is the enemy of the peoples. No, in Libya, the West was the friend of the people. They gave the hand and they were helpful. So in Syria, it is the same, but it is late. It is 40,000 dead too late. But nevertheless, it is still time. It is still time to show to the youth of Syria that we hear their appeal to liberty, that we are able to listen to their call for human rights.